Hey everyone, as our continued series on Women's History Month, we're here with Gretchen Hamm, Chief Growth Officer at the Washington Spirit. We just want to spotlight some really amazing women in sports and get to know them a little bit better. So Gretchen, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to hear about your background and everything that you have to tell us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's always good to get attention at least 1 month a year.
Absolutely. Well, we'll try to keep it going all year and, continue our support of all the growth in not only women on their own, but, the teams and the leagues in the sports realm itself. So I will jump right in and just berate you with a bunch of questions and, get to know you a little bit better. Tell me about your background and, what path you took to get to where you are.
Yeah, so I played soccer all growing up, actually, and that is what led me to college. I don't know how people choose college without some anchor like sports, because I was very overwhelmed with the process, even having soccer.
Yes.
So I played soccer at undergrad, Providence College, and had no idea it was time to pick a major. I had no idea, and the woman she had been my captain my freshman year, and then she was our assistant coach. She had graduated. She was like, well, I was a marketing major. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. Like, I had no idea. And then I ended up working in the on-campus ice arena, actually in the concession stand, because I worked at Dairy Queen growing up, and ended up like having ideas for promotions. And they were at a place where they were willing to try stuff. So one of my promotions actually ended up in the first sellout in like 5 years. And so that was kind of how I figured out, like, oh, I can marry being, close to a team still and, with work. And then I don't have a traditional path to being a professional sports executive. I actually worked in facilities like youth, amateur, indoor facilities. I ran nonprofits. I did athletic development at George Washington University in grad school. And then a couple of years ago, when the new majority owner came in, we had a mutual friend. And so that friend called and was like, Steve Baldwin is amazing. You have to meet him. He bought the team and wants to use it as a women's empowerment platform. And we went to lunch, and anyone who spends any amount of time around Steve Baldwin just is like inspired and wants to run through fire for him. So that was 2 years and 2 days ago that I started with the Spirit.
Oh, awesome. Well, you sort of answered this, but is there, obviously with an athletic background, I also was a college athlete, so it kind of helped me on my journey as well. Was there anything else about sports that made you want to stick in that realm and in that industry, aside from just being kind of in it your whole life and in the athletic, realm in college?
Yeah, I think I'm a very passionate, like emotional driven person. So I think that has seemed to be a little more applicable to the sports world than I had one job outside of sports. I thought that, it'd be nice to have a 401k and 9 to 5. And I was director of marketing for a bank, and I had a great 401k and it was 9 to 5, but it was, there was not a lot of passion in the banking world. So I think being able to, be passionate about it, and the team sense, whether that's the team you're working with or the players on the team, or even, the fans or the donors or the community members around the activity, has always been attractive to me.
Yeah, absolutely. What challenges have you faced being a woman in the sports industry, whether it's, the roles you've had, the places you've worked, or any of those different types of aspects?
I think in some ways, I've had like a great career. And then, it's interesting as the younger generation calls out bad male behavior more often. I do feel that I've looked back and been like, wow, we just put up with a lot. Whether it was, not negotiating for your salaries, or being cut off in meetings, or, dismissed, or having to, pretend that a man is smarter or has a good idea because they're in a higher power or, higher position or whatever. So I do, I think those are some of the challenges, and I'm inspired by a lot of our players are amazing. And so it's been, a good reminder. And I think getting to my age too, you just put up with less BS. So nothing like, too terrible, but yeah, definitely not like a smooth, easy ride that might have otherwise happened.
Yeah, that's kind of how I put it too. It's like I haven't faced any enormous challenges personally, in like no one's personally attacked me in that sense, but I similarly.
But how sad is that, right? Like that's our level of,
yeah,
a bar of,
but similar, like you were just saying, I do look back and in a little bit of my younger years, and I've said this before, is like I was trying to fit into a boys club versus change the conversation around it. And like, as I grew into that, I realized like how to stand up for it versus try to fit into it. And that I feel like made a big difference in my career projection.
That is a great, I feel like that conformity has come up in several conversations recently around white privilege. But I think it's also applicable for women in the workplace, and like having to, like, I joke that like men love to spend the first 5 minutes of a meeting or a conference call like shooting the shit and talking about the weekend and it's like most women don't want to do that. Most women want to like, let's get to work. Why are we here? But we all have to then, like, I've learned to like play that game and chat and, oh, my son is great and blah, blah, blah. When, so I think that's an interesting analysis. And I think, it's like, I think that's why Alex Morgan and Sue Bird started their company. Like, just do it our way. Like,
yeah. No, I love that. What would you like to see the future of the sports industry? What would you want to see it grow as? What are some of the biggest changes you hope to see over the next few years? Both, I'll say two sides of this question is from the perspective of people working in the sports realm, but also just the teams and the leagues of the professional women's sports teams themselves.
Well, I would love to see more sponsorship money and more media coverage, because I think and media coverage, I think, drives sponsorship because it helps drive awareness, which drives ticket sales, which drives eyeballs, which drives sponsorships, right? It's all intertwined. I would love for sportscasters to say men's basketball and not just like, why is the default men's basketball when you say basketball and you have to say women's, or just say basketball and just say, the team or whatever sport it is. So I think, yeah, if I had a wish list, I think more media coverage and more sponsorship dollars would be just take it all to the next level. And more women in the rooms, more women in the decision-making, more people of color in the decision-making. Everyone in America, like all walks of life, loves sports. So I think trying to have all like walks of life and different opinions around the boardroom would probably be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. How important is, the youth sports role in also growing the professional leagues themselves, of getting the younger generation involved in just rec leagues and in more competitive leagues? And are you seeing like a good growth in that and a good kind of, I guess, marketing to some of the families and the youth leagues to help with that growth?
Yeah. So now you're really speaking my language, because I was in youth soccer and now I'm here. And one of the first initiatives that I had when I came here was we really needed to get those youth clubs on to be partners. Like in our area, there's something like 60 youth clubs throughout Maryland, DC, and Virginia, comprising like 300,000, kids playing soccer. And, theoretically, that's a warm audience, warm target audience for us. And so some of the pro teams in different sports, when they're working with youth clubs, they want them to actually pay them or just sell tickets or whatever. And we're not the NFL, we're not, and we really we have a strong community commitment. And so we came up with what we feel is a true partnership agreement where, we're asking them to promote our games, our activities, whatever. We actually provide a fundraising opportunity by, if they sell tickets, that actually a percentage goes back to the clubs. And we did a lot of Zoom appearances last year with the players, but, access to coaching education from our coaches and different things like that. So we have about 45 clubs signed on to that partnership. And so that has been an incredible, I think that has been one of the audiences that in terms of our brand awareness that has really lifted us. And I think it's really important for not only the young girls to see what they can do, but the young boys. I have an 11-year-old son, and it's not women's soccer to him. It's just soccer, you know, and he had to buy an Alex Morgan jersey, you know, during the World Cup, you know, a couple years ago. And he looks at these women as athletes. And so I think as we are looking to really break the gender discrimination, I think, you know, making sure that it's okay for young boys to look up to women is an important component of that.
Yeah, my husband also tried to find a jersey for my son, but he was too small. They didn't make him in the small size, so he was like. But similarly, he wanted the same jersey for my son as well. So that's
yeah.
But what advice, you know, would you give to women who want to break into the sports industry, may already be in their careers, but want to shift over, you know, whether it's how to react while you're in it, or, you know, just the break in. I know sometimes people think it's hard to get into sports, but there's a lot of unconventional ways to kind of get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think my path was a little bit different to becoming an executive of a professional sports team. You know, I think it's a challenging industry. I think one piece of advice I always give people who haven't worked in sports is that it is only sexy about 10% of the time. You know, 90% of the time it is not at all sexy and a grind and whatnot. But that 10% of the time is pretty amazing. I remember when we sold out Audi Field in 2019, I took our ticket sales director at halftime and I walked her out to the middle of the field and we looked around. I said, "You did this, you know, look around." It was amazing. 20,000 screaming fans for, you know, I think it's very competitive. There's not a ton of money, you know, for a long time, or, you know, until you get up higher. I think there are still a lot of that. It's an old boys network. And I think it's an industry that's also very, very about your connections, you know, and for good or for bad. And I think it's an evolving industry. I mean, I feel like it's young. Like I started working in sports in '98 and it was just emerging as, you know, very popular. So I still feel like it's a very young industry. I mean, I think a couple opportunities that I think are growing. I had a call with a young woman who asked for advice this morning. And I said, business analytics, being able to analyze sponsorships and that value is, people are now hiring for that job. I mean, we have a software that tracks some of that for us. And being able to really, you know, I feel like in the past, you know, the marketing was like, oh, great action game picture or practice picture or whatever. How can you make the sponsors integrated into your social media, your email marketing, your website, that isn't offensive to the fans and that's actually boosting, you know, a positive feelings of the team and the brand. So I think those are two areas, and the community relations I think has grown significantly in the last 10 years across all sports. But I think it's challenging, and I think, another piece of advice I get is if you can sell at all, and you want to work on like a pro team, is ticket offices are always hiring. And once you're into an organization, I think it's a lot easier to make a move, whether it's laterally or, you know, into another department or whatever. I mean, we get 300 applications for a coordinator position, you know?
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard to get in.
Yeah, definitely. I also sort of took an unconventional approach, although I've been in sports. I started with a startup company on like a sports radio content side, and then kind of made my way through to team side, and now, you know, all these different things. So I always tell people similarly, like, find your niche, find your area that you can find. Brands have sponsorship groups, you know, so it definitely is a challenge.
Yeah, a lot of people want to work in it, and so it's interesting, but I've enjoyed it. 20 years working in sports.
Well, that was like all the questions I would love to hear from you. Is there anything else that you want to offer from a, you know, women's in sports perspective, just a sports industry perspective, or anything specific to your team that you're excited for this, you know, you're in your upcoming season, especially, I'm sure last year has been interesting. anything else that you could provide to us?
I had a great, after the 2019 World Cup, after every World Cup, there's been this increased, passion for women's soccer in America. And you see people going to the games, and, the leagues have come and gone. And, thankfully we're now in our 9th year and looking, solid. Our commissioner's doing a great job. But I think what really resonated to me in 2019 that was different from the previous World Cups was, number one, the boys watching and buying merchandise. And number two was when the team was drunk as heck on Budweiser and they weren't attacked, or they weren't attacked in mainstream. When the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup a couple of years ago, they were drunk for like a month and no one said a word, right? And so I kept bracing myself that because they were women and because they're supposed to be role models, that they were going to get slammed. And there was some criticisms, but it wasn't, that to me, I thought, okay, has America accepted these women as women and people, not just role models that have to be these perfect little, be put in front of my 10-year-old daughter and you're perfect and you don't swear and you're, pretty and, some of those things. So I think the fact that, Megan Rapinoe can speak her mind, and that these women can marry their wives, and that, all of these things are happening, that they can get drunk. I think those are amazing testaments, not only to where our country is as a society, but, how we are viewing, female athletes. So that was incredibly encouraging. And from a, Washington Spirit 2021 perspective, I'm so looking forward to this year. We'll be at Audi Field and Segra Field. And, the rookies that were my rookie year, I like to say Sam Staub and Jordan DiBiase and Bailey Feist and Dorian Bailey and Tegan McGrady, they're, still with the club on long-term contracts. So I think, and really, I think all of our team now is on long-term contracts. So really excited to see everybody healthy, and it's going to be an exciting, I can't wait to get started. We're about a month away. We'll be, our first home game will be April 16th. And the broadcast partnership with CBS is amazing, and streaming on Paramount, so you can see all the games. So it's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting. We'll definitely be watching all of it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Love hearing about you and your amazing work you're doing. So just thank you. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.